Yesterday we learned that the amplitude is A and the period is 2 pi divided by B. Today what we do is we learn the horizontal shift and the vertical shift. The vertical shift is D. It's that number that sits on the outside. So D sits on the outside, and that will create a vertical shift. In order to determine the horizontal shift, solve Bx minus C is equal to 0, and whatever you get for x, that's your horizontal shift. Yeah, so yesterday what we did is we looked at these kind of shapes, okay? You maybe had these two kind of graphs, you know, you change the amplitude, you change the period, but today what we're going to do is we're going to take that graph and then we're going to move it right, left, up, and down, okay? So yesterday we looked at the difference between these two. Today we take these and we move them right, left, up, and down. That's what happens, okay? So, as you apply these shifts, we always start with a vertical shift. And as you look at this example right here, this does have a vertical shift. What's the number on the end? So it's going to be shifted up 2 units. And what we do is we draw a vertical axis or horizontal axis through the shift. What's the amplitude? After we do vertical shift, we do the amplitude. What is the amplitude? 3. This is where people get a little bit confused. Hopefully this won't be bad, but if the amplitude is 3 and the vertical shift is 2, what's the highest point that it will go? It'll go up to 5. What's the lowest point that it would go? How do you get that, Jake? Yep, so you took 2 and you added 3 and 2 and you subtracted 3. You got 5 and you got -1. Good luck. Go be leaders. Represent Albert Lee. Yeah. So, yeah, so you see how I came up with 5 and -1? 5 is my maximum value, -1 is my minimum value. I took 2 plus 3 to get my maximum value. I took 2 minus 3 to get my minimum value. Okay? So the amplitude, mark off your min and your max. Then the period, talked about yesterday, is 2 pi divided by b. What's the b value in this situation? It's the number in front of x. 1. So 2 pi divided by 1 is 2 pi. And your horizontal shift, you take the inside, and here the inside is just x. That's all it is. You set it equal to 0. And so there is no horizontal shift. So I'm going to mark off my period, 2 pi. Divide it in half to get pi. Pi over 2. 3 pi over 2. You okay? Where do I start? Where do I start? Max, min, middle. Maximum. So you're going to start up at 5. Cross over, drop down, back up to the top. Anybody, how do I know to start 5? Okay, so cosine starts at the maximum or the minimum, and if it's positive, it'll start at the maximum. If we go back to the actual unit circle, I like to call it the circle of life, then we look at the coordinate at 0, we have 1, 0. Is cosine the x value or the y value? It's the x value. So the cosine of 0 is 1 times 3 is 3 plus 2 is 5. If you would plug in 0, you get a value of 5. So it starts at the maximum. What do you want? Who knows? Yeah, maybe if you would have showed up yesterday. Yeah, sine starts in the middle. So the sine of 0 is 0. It's the y value. So it will start at the middle because sine of 0, 0 times 3 would be 0 plus 2 would be 2. So it'll start at the middle of the rotation. And now I try to draw my pretty graph. Who has an ugly graph? Anybody have an ugly graph? Oh, finger pointing here. All right, let's check out Carter's graph. Draw. Everybody can draw. Stick figures. Here we go. All right, let's move back to example A. We want to draw y is equal to sine of x minus pi over 4. I start with the vertical shift. Is there a vertical shift? No, there's not. What's the amplitude? 1. What's the period? 2 pi. Wow, he's on fire. I don't know. How do you find it? 2 pi over b. What's b? Where do you find b? Where do I look? I look for the value in front of x. 2 pi divided by the value in front of x. All right, is there a horizontal shift? So all the inside equals 0 and you get pi over 4. Now, I'm going to mark off the 1 and the negative 1. I mark off 2 pi, negative 2 pi, pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, negative pi over 2. Megan, did you get a second study guide? Okay. All right. So I am not going to graph the entire function yet. This is where some students become confused. I will help you move through the mountain of confusion. Anybody watch the movie yet? Meru? Okay, gotta watch the documentary. It's worth your time. Trust me. Okay, hey. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to graph it without the horizontal shift. Remember when we did hyperbolas, you used a Tanner rectangle in order to help organize your work? Well, here I like to use what I call a ghost graph. And so I'm going to graph these 3 pieces, but I'm not going to use the horizontal shift yet. Sine starts in the middle, it heads up, plot my dots, and then I draw a dotted graph. Otherwise, people make mistakes, and it's very difficult to follow your work on the test. Question? You don't know why we make 4 dots, right? That's what you got to watch. Okay, so just pretend like you know it, even though you don't. And then when you watch the video from yesterday, you'll know it. You should have your parents get internet at home. All right, so. I'm a funny person. All right, so now, if the horizontal shift is pi over 4, how much of a tick mark is pi over 4? 1 tick mark is pi over 2, so pi over 4 would be half of a tick mark. So I'm going to move all of the tick marks half of a unit to the right. I'm sorry, all the important points I'm going to move a half of a tick mark. Sorry, I was focused on the phone when I was saying that. So I moved all of those important dots that I made just a half a unit to the right, half of a tick mark to the right. So now I've got this graph. And if I grab hold of it, you can see that it's the exact same graph that I had before. It's just shifted to the right, pi over 4 units. Yo. I just scribbled it out instead of erasing it. It's a positive pi over 4. It's like a bug that gets splattered on the screen, sorry. So you've seen 2 basic examples. Let's try 2 more difficult examples, and then you'll be ready for your assignment today. Letter C, what is the vertical shift? And the amplitude? Amplitude will always be positive. We'll say it's 4. So if the vertical shift is down 2 and the amplitude is 4, what is my minimum value and what is my maximum value? Minimum is -6, maximum is +2. So I go all the way down to -6, all the way up to +2. I have a tick mark every 2. All right, I move on to the second set. These are the horizontal parts of the graph, the period. Anybody? Period. 2. Dose. Good job, Jill. You beat right into it. So we've got 2 is our period. I'm going to divide that up into 4 parts so that Braden can understand why do we divide it up into 4 parts. What does it represent? Think of the unit circle, folks. What has 4 in the unit circle? Quadrants. Yeah, 4 quadrants. 4 90-degree sections, quadrants. So that tells us sine and cosine's rotation through the unit circle. That's why we divide up into 4 parts. And finally, we have our horizontal shift. Is there a horizontal shift? There is. I don't want to look at it right now. I'm going to make my ghost graph first. Where does the ghost graph start? What? There's no pi in this one because the period is 2 pi divided by the letter b. And b is pi. Those cancel. It gives me 2. Okay, where do I start? Minimum. Why? It's negative. It's cosine. Good. Start the minimum. Head up. That's my ghost graph. I now am going to take the inside and set it equal to 0 and solve. So pi x minus 1 is equal to 0, or pi x is equal to 1, or x is equal to 1 over pi, which is about 0.3. 0.3. How much of a tick mark is 0.3? Is it more than 1 tick mark? Is it less than 1 tick mark? Less than 1 tick mark, because 1 tick mark is 0.5. So it's a little bit more than half of a tick mark, though, right? So I'm going to take each of these points and move them a little bit more than half of a tick mark. And yes, it is an estimation, but we've shown you that when we graph these, we are remarkably accurate with the overall graph. Bless you, okay, buddy? Now, some of you guys don't like my graph. You think it's bad, it's ugly. I get it. So we'll check it on the calculator. I just type it in. I change my window so that's appropriate. And I press the graph key. And judge me now. I mean, look at that. I mean, look at its behavior through the y-axis. It's exactly what I have. Look at the 2 little maximum spots there. It's exactly what I have. Look how it ends off the graph. It's exactly what I have. I mean, it's pretty impressive, right? Dana thinks she can do better. All right, Dana, challenge is on. All right. Go ahead, do D on your own. D on your own, and then we'll get you your assignment. Vertical shift to 3, amplitude of 1 means that it's going to go at a maximum of 4, a minimum of 2. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, then the period is pi. I don't worry about the horizontal shift until after I sketch a ghost graph. Sine, max, min, or middle? Middle. B. Rodden. Amplitude is always positive, like distance. When we wrote it down, we said absolute value of A, right? You're sleeping? It's okay. It's kind of nap time somewhere. All right, so that's my ghost graph. Now I'm going to shift everything horizontally pi over 4. How much of a tick mark is pi over 4? It's one whole tick mark. So everything moves one tick mark to the right. Everything moves. And there's my graph. Beautiful. Thank you. What? You don't like it? Your gangster talk is lacking. Jake has excellent gangster talk. All right, worksheet for your assignment.